What's up? Back again.
I thought you weren't going to say it for a second.
I forgot my line, man. It's been like 10
I was
days.
like, wait a minute, something's wrong. I got to go back.
It's been like 10 days since we did a show. I got confused.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but we're back because we've been in Europe for the last 4 or 5 shows. So we've been messing up everybody's time scale, not being around on Wednesdays and all that stuff. But here we are back on Wednesday, so world returns to normal.
Yep.
And we have Leonard, Harkless, WAF head referee, joining us this evening. Hello, Leonard.
How you guys doing? Good to see you.
Hell yeah. It's good to see you, too.
First questions first. Where are the details?
Yeah,
Everybody's going to ask it. Might as well just get it out of the way now.
You know, that was, I have to admit, that was the funniest thing that I've ever seen happen. I mean, just out of the blue, this guy from India asked me for the details, and it's just like, details about what?
Yeah.
And it just exploded. And the poor dude, he never came back on and actually told me what details he really wanted.
That's exactly what Facebook should be used for, by the way. And I really hope that guy was just a troll, like a fake guy. And he's just out there so satisfied that it hits so hard. It's just perfect.
Well, in reality, he really is a real guy, and he's there was 2 arm wrestling associations in India, and he's with the other one, the old one that didn't make it, and so he's
familiar.
And I have a hard time recognizing that kind of stuff, but he was a real guy, and he never did come back on and say, what exactly details are you looking for?
Yeah, it's a little vague. Maybe that's why his organization fell apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe that's exactly why.
The last 1% that they needed were those details, Leonard.
With those details, and I was not going to give them to him. Hell, even my daughter got involved, saying, "Well, he ain't giving me the details. Why would he give?" We had some fun with it, and I'm not exactly sure what are you guys going to ask me about all these polls about the Unified Nationals?
Oh yeah, we're asking you all that shit, man.
Yeah. That's in reality, I kind of chuckle a bit because some people actually think that they're voting and these polls actually mean something.
Right.
In reality, there's exactly 5 individuals that's going to make the decision on exactly how this stuff's going to be done. I mean, you know.
Well, walk us through that, Leonard. How does it work exactly? Because most of us, like you said, we spend a lot of time talking on the internet, but we don't really know what the hell we're talking about. So,
well, the Team USA and USAF is owned by 5 individuals: Phil Collins, Simon Cox, and the 2 Beans, and so they have control over what they do. Denise and I were 2 of the owners in the past, and we gave up our shares in the corporation, and we resigned from the executive board, though our organization, the USAA, is still a general member of USAF. So we still have a small tie to the organization, but those 5 make those decisions. Now, obviously, I have my own opinion on all those polls. The makeup of the team, it was in the board itself. There was a large controversy on how that team was made up, and for most of the time of USAF, Denise Waddles actually was the team captain. She set up the team, she managed the team, and basically, if you wanted to go to Worlds, you come to the Unified Nationals. Okay? If you wanted to risk whether you had a spot or not, then that was fine. But if you really wanted to go, you went to the Unified Nationals. Now, some people, for whatever reason, either work, money, jobs, family obligations. Sometimes you may want to go to Worlds, but you can't go to Worlds.
Sure.
And if your spot was open up to 2011, somewhere in there, if there was a spot open and nobody in your class from Nationals wanted to go, then it was given out by the team manager to the best arm wrestler available that was willing to go. And that's how we filled the teams. But prior to 2011, we hardly had a team going to Worlds under 40, 50 people. 2011, I think, was probably our lowest because that was in Kazakhstan. And Denise didn't run the 2011 team. I think 2010 was the last time she ran the team. But I think we only had half a dozen guys go to Kazakhstan in 2011. But it did two things. It filled the team. You know, a lot of people don't realize this, but your worth on the world stage is based on how many competitors you bring to the World Championships. Like if the United States brings 10 people, you don't have much credibility on the world stage when you only bring 10 people there.
Sure.
You bring 40, 50 people, then your team has more credibility, more power, more worth when you're talking about things in World Congress. And so like who cares if US doesn't come if you only bring 10 people?
Sure.
You're
not
hurting
right. Attendance.
Exactly. You bring 50 people, and now you're bringing a lot of money and prestige to the event itself. And so you know, there's dual reasons to have a big team, and it becomes self-feeding too. Like it's a lot of fun when you go to Worlds with a large team. When you go to Worlds with 5 or 6 people, like we did in Kazakhstan, you guys are all spread out. I think you guys were in 3 different hotels, and it was you know, it's not a lot of fun that way.
Sure.
Right. What do you think is the ideal format to get a lot of people, you know, to Worlds on a regular basis? Do you think what you guys did before was ideal, or is there some system? I mean, I'm sure you've read all the conversations that were happening and complaints about, including from me, about there being too many nationals and that kind of stuff. What do you think is the ideal method to get the maximum number of people to Worlds?
There's been 3 nationals for 20-some years. Well, and since 98. There's been 3 nationals since 1998. So 19 years, there's been 3 nationals. So losing or adding or subtracting a national isn't going to affect how many people go to Worlds. How good the Unified National Championship is affects who goes there. Like you don't have, but even if you don't want to go to Worlds, if nobody, they're still going to Unified National if the competition level is there. Like I want to pull those guys, and they're going to Unified National.
Sure.
I can't go to Turkey, but I want to pull those guys. I want to see how I match up. And the more you have that, the more popular the Unified National is going to be. Getting the top level arm wrestlers to go there makes more people want to go there.
Don't you think that, you know, say arm wrestling was more like other sports? You know, my son climbs, and they have one organization, and they go through the process of competing in local tournaments, and then they go to regionals, and then they can go to divisionals, and then finally top 6 will go to nationals, and from there they take the top 3 to Worlds. So it's a very easy to understand system. It's also very linear. Don't you think that if arm wrestling had a system that was very clear and unchanging so that people knew exactly what to expect year to year, and if the nationals really meant, or at least, as John says, you know, it's not your fault if someone doesn't show up, but if there's one nationals and you win it or you place, you know, in a pretty good position, then you can legitimately say that you're at the top of your class, whatever it may be, because there is just a single nationals.
In my opinion, who's running it, how they're running it, affects the turnout. For instance, you may or may not be aware, but in Canada, you have to arm wrestle in a local event to go to provisionals.
Right.
And then once you go to provisionals, then you can go to nationals. Now, it's not that you have to place at provisionals. First off, you don't go to provisional unless you go to a local tournament. So you actually have to arm wrestle in a local tournament to go to provisionals. And once you've been to provisionals, then you can go to nationals. So they got kind of that system in Canada that you're talking about, where you have to pull locally to pull provisional, you have to pull provisional to pull nationals. And until Rick Pinckney really kind of revised this triple elimination and people wanting to go to their nationals, how they were getting 120, 140 entries at their national. So that system didn't create a lot of interest and pullers at their nationals. What created it was Rick Pinckney and the rest of his board that kind of revitalized Canada and how they're doing things. And now their numbers are up at 300 again, right? So they've doubled their numbers. In the U.S., frankly, our numbers went away in relationship to kind of WAL, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I mean, arm wrestlers can only go to so many tournaments a year. You only have so many events that you can go to, only so many vacation days, and when you have money events and TV events, you're naturally going to go to those events. Makes sense, right? And if you go to those events, do you have time to go to a non-cash tournament in Lake Tahoe or in Reno or even in Vegas?
Sure.
Right? It may not be that much money, but you still don't have that, that vacation time and money to go pull a non-cash tournament when you can go pull cash tournaments. And so their numbers dropped, and it's again self-feeding thing. The lower your numbers dropped, the more people didn't want to go because there was nobody going that they wanted to pull. So Game of Arms helped arm wrestling. Game of Arms did all kinds of these ads and commercials for arm wrestling, for their show. They promoted their show. And when you seen it on TV, you were a brand new guy and you seen it on TV, what'd you do? You go on the internet, where's the tournament, right? And you go find a tournament in that area. And you go to tournaments. A prime example is our Orlando event. Before Game of Arms, we were getting 140 entries there. Not bad. That's respectable.
Yeah.
Okay? Game of Arms came out, we went to 240. 240. Do the math. That's like a 75% increase in entry fees.
Sure.
All right. So Game of Arms goes away, and we get WAL. We went from 240 to 120. We got 50% less. We actually dropped below the whole experiment started. Okay. Now, what we were hoping is that ESPN and all the rest of it would eventually bring in enough people to bring our numbers back up. Never really did.
Well, yeah, it didn't stay around long enough, right? So basically what you're saying is the Game of Arms created a lot of interest while WAL created a lot of tournaments. Really?
Which then pulled those people into all those tournaments, which is fine.
Yeah.
But you would think after 4 years that enough new people coming in would have brought everybody's numbers back up, at least to where we started.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but we all know arm wrestling too. How many of those new people stick?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that, but when it's on ESPN wasn't promoting it because it's not their show.
Sure.
So how many commercials did you see for WAL? When you were watching ESPN, how many commercials? I didn't see any.
Right.
When the show comes on, fine, but commercials to promote the show. How many of those commercials did you see? None. When it was Game of Arms, there was commercials on AMC all the time about Game of Arms.
It's true.
Yeah, Facebook banners, everything.
And then you add to the fact that they went away from what in my opinion, what makes TV arm wrestling popular, which is people and situations. Savan Matosian and Dave Devoto filmed our Unified Nationals in 2004 in Rising Sun, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
WF rules, no special pads, no special rules. He's just filming the event. But Savan Matosian and Dave Devoto knew from the Wide World of Sports, they knew that it's people that makes it interesting. So they took 6 guys and they followed them through the tournament.
Right.
And they talked to all of their competitors and they talked to them. It was about them in the tournament showing their matches and showing other matches too. But it was about those people. That got some of the highest rated arm wrestling on ESPN. People watched the hell out of it and they liked it. When WL came in, it was all tournament format, wasn't it? They weren't really following those people through so much. It was
right. A little confusing.
Way too many people to focus on, and their ratings was horrible. Their last rating shows, from what I understand, they had to rebate ad money back to the sponsors.
Wow.
You're guaranteeing, ESPN guarantees a certain level of people watching, a certain rating,
right.
And if you drop below that rating, they have to rebate back ad money.
Yeah, and thinking back to that 2004 show that you were talking about as well, I remember that very well. And interesting thinking back that we talk about the fouls and running fouls, bigger pads, all these things that we, the argument that the little tiny fouls really get rid of the audience. A big part of that 2004 show of the 220 class was Mike Bowling fouling out. They highlighted why he fouled out and explained exactly how, and it didn't hurt anything.
It doesn't. And in fact, that's where the Todd Hutchings saying of you need a lawyer to get a grip with Mike Celieris.
Yeah.
That's what that came from, that show.
That's right. That's right.
That's a really good point. I mean, a lot of the sports we watch in the Olympics, like judo, for example, which is one of my favorites, they never show the whole matches. They show all the throws that people get. There's no reason that arm wrestling shows couldn't be something similar. I think when they did the
Wide World of Sports, they stacked the deck to make sure that their stars was going to be seen in the semifinal and finals. If you were last year's champion, you didn't even pull until they made top 8. It was single elimination. Yeah. For instance, the last year the Wide World of Sports filmed it, I had 100 guys in my weight class. 100 guys, right? So if you're last year's champion, you didn't even pull till they were down to 7 and you made 8, right? So they knew that that's where their guys were. That's where they wanted to show them. And frankly, those of us mid-level guys, because I was never a top-level puller. I was always a mid-level pro. We were fine with that. Like, did I want to meet Johnny Walker in the first round? Did I want to meet Clay Rosenkrantz in the first round?
Sure.
Heck no. If I'm going to pull him, I want it later on. I don't want that kind of pull first round. And so for most of us, and that's the meat of any tournament. The mid-level pros. I mean, we were perfectly fine with that. But they knew that those are the guys: Walker, Rosenkrantz, Kim Edwards, Cleve Dean, Patton, Fisher. They wanted those guys in the finals because that's where the audience was. That's where the attention was.
Well, you get used to the names, and it's exciting to see the people whose names compete. So that makes sense. I mean, that follows other sports that we all love. I don't know, man. I think your earlier point that I wanted to mention, the Game of Arms, in addition to the fact that it didn't have any related tournaments, there was no money. I mean, they were winning like a few $100 at the table, but there certainly wasn't any more of a financial incentive than you could find in a decent local tournament. Whereas WAL was offering such huge amounts of money, people skipped tournaments like yours and like others all around the country because they wanted to save themselves for the 2 or 3 WAL events that they would do. So it actually had, as you said, I think it was across the country, people's numbers at non-WAL tournaments dropped.
Sure.
And even the WAL tournaments themselves were very small because the people that were showing up were ones that had a chance to compete, which, as you said, is a very small percentage of arm wrestlers.
Well, and everybody wants to be on TV. They didn't need to give out that kind of money, first off. I mean, all of us would have pulled for $1,000 for first place and thought we were in pig heaven.
Yeah, we would have.
You know what I mean? You didn't need those kind of dollar amounts to do it. And the other thing that like WWC and with Wide World of Sports, one of the other things that they did to keep our interest. I mean, think about showing up at a tournament with a single elimination. You know that you lose once and you're gone, and you know there's going to be 100 guys in your class, and you still keep going. Yeah. You still keep going year after year after year. Why is that? Because they had this small little bleacher section behind the arm wrestling tables or wrist wrestling tables, and you didn't get to sit in those bleachers unless you made top 8.
Right.
Well, if you made top 8, you know you're on Wide World Sports, don't you? So that was all of our goal. That was everybody's goal. It wasn't to win it. It was to make top 8. To make top 8 and to sit in those stands and be the backdrop of the tables. They were very. You got to give Dave Devoto a lot of credit. They were, and Wide World Sports. They were very crafty on what to do to get us arm wrestlers to keep coming back year after year. My first year there was in 81. I was one and done, man. Lost my first match. Came back in 82, 83, 84. It wasn't until my very last year was Wide World Sports that I made top 8. Mm-hmm. I mean, it took me 5 years to be able to make top 8, but I still drug my fat butt there every year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, the idea of, like you said, 100 people in your class, single elimination, the amount of risk to go to something like that single elimination, how much margin of error do you have? None. So, and then what you said before too is, when you talk about nationals, good guys show up. I want my chance to go against that guy. I don't know how. I think that's going away a little bit, Leonard. I think people would rather show up and get a 3rd place trophy going 2 and out because 3 people showed up. I really think that that's kind of starting to come around because someone might take a Facebook video and that's good enough. I had one good match and it's on Facebook and everybody liked it. It's good enough. Or, I'd rather show up to a kind of a watered down tournament with $100 for first place. I'll take that. I don't really care about beating the best guy, because that best guy, like, I know guys who won't drive an hour because they know they can't win the tournament, which is just crazy. Yeah,
it's I have 2 of my what I call old man complaints, and that's one of them where guys like I won't use names, but I had an event where these 2 guys were really good. And one of them was in a lighter weight class, and he deliberately wouldn't enter that other guy's class. His comment was, if he wants to pull me, he's going to have to do it for money. Well, like really? like
I don't bring out the real ass whipping for free.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think I can beat him, but I'm not going to do it unless there's money involved. And I didn't say a word because like.
Whatever.
All right,
yeah.
I'll make our own decisions, but that's
a weak one. That's a pretty weak decision.
That was so not the way that I started the sport. And the other thing is my other old man complaint is that there's been so many tournaments that people are so lazy that they won't drive 400 miles to go to a freaking tournament. Mm-hmm. Like, if it ain't in their backyard, they're not going to go to that tournament. Like I'm going to. Like I'm not going to spend the money to go travel that tournament. Really, you spent more than that at the bar last night. Shut up.
That's the truth. I think John is right, and I think you're right too. I mean, when I started in the sport, which was in the late '80s, there was very little money in the sport, for most of us, other than the crazy tournaments you were just talking about. But we used to drive all over the goddamn place. I mean, I remember driving 7 to 8 hours to Buffalo on a regular basis to go to little tournaments and being completely psyched about it. And I think that, I was never, like you, I've never been an elite level arm wrestler, but I always had a lot of fun, and I had a lot of teammates that were elite, so it was fun watching them. But that aspect is seeming to like dissipate quite a bit too. So I don't know if it was because of WAL and the big money and everybody changed their minds about stuff or what, but it is disappointing. Like when I go to your tournaments and Bill Collins tournaments, they're always extremely high quality. And I keep, and frequently, especially recently, the numbers they should be 2 or 3 times bigger than what they are. And I just sit there, I'm like, I'm in Charlotte, I live in Boston. This tournament's awesome. Where the fuck is everybody? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me that people are missing out on really highly, successful, long-term, well-reffed, well-organized, smooth tournaments. And instead they're traveling to places, I mean, I'm going to mention PAF. I think Anthony's a good guy, and I think he was trying, but he's saying he's going to give a lot of people money and pay this and pay that. And same thing with WL, and you don't do it. People show up and they don't get what they were expecting. Now, I guess the tournament turned out to be pretty good, but I mean, what?
Well, of course it turned out pretty good. People thought there was up to 4 days out. People thought there was going to be $18,000 given out, which wasn't what was initially advertised either.
Right. Yeah.
It's still on the Northeast board, I believe. That's advertising it at $50,000. Mm-hmm. So it started out at 50.
Yeah, believe me, there's at least 20 people out there with screenshots of it, I'm sure.
No, I think not screenshots. I believe it's still there. Yeah. Like we checked a week ago. It's still on their site at 50,000. Uh-huh. And then you go to and then what 6 months out he says it's going to be 18,000. So up to 4 days before the event, everything was going to be $18,000, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're going to get a good turnout when you're telling everybody it's going to be $18,000. Mm-hmm. And 4 days out, you bail. Now, if you're local and you're in Florida, then all right, what do you don't have much invested. It's the guys that had airline.
Sure. Yeah.
They're the ones that got screwed.
I mean, I feel bad for Sweden.
If Karen Bean or Denise and I had done that, we'd have been tarred and feathered.
True.
I mean, seriously.
No, you're right.
I mean, there was no way that it would ruin us if we did something like that. And Karen complains about it, and everybody says how she's picking on him, or I complain and I'm picking on him, and he blocks me, and like really, I joked that we need to send Anthony Letterio to the Middle East because his ability to get two people that do not like each other to be on the same side is unbelievable. I mean, he's the only person that's gotten Karen Bean and I to walk side by side on an issue. We got to send him to the Middle East. He'll have the Israelis and the Palestinians working together in no time.
It's worth a try. We'll have to talk to Anthony about that.
And one thing too that you brought up, Josh, that's interesting when you were talking about these great tournaments that you go to, and you go, where is everybody? I mean, these are great events, good equipment, good venues, and you said great reffing. And that's a problem these days, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a problem.
Keep the good reffing at home, guys. I'll take some of the bad stuff. That's what killed me about the professional. We want professional arm wrestling, but we want to let listen. If you can't follow these basic guidelines, then you're not acting very professional. Sorry to tell you. If you can't keep your elbow down when they say to keep your elbow down, you get a 7x7 square. We all train them every week, multiple times. That's professionalism, is being able to follow a set of guidelines that are followable and digestible by the public.
Now I got my own problem with the 7x7 square. I'm old enough to have arm wrestled and been around when we had pockets, when we had donuts, and a round donut, and when we went to a 7x7 flat top pad, we took a lot of the aggressiveness out of the matches. And I'm talking like as an arm wrestler now, not as a ref. Frankly, the flat top pads are the easiest thing in the world to ref. I mean, either you got daylight or you don't get you got daylight. Man, it's there's no judgment, there's no issues. But as an arm wrestler, and I obviously have arm wrestled on them. It's difficult keeping your elbow down, even when you're trying to make an effort to. Sometimes you do an elbow,
especially
foul,
if they're hard.
Makes you exactly, especially when the elbow pads are stiff. But it makes you so you're not aggressive on the table. Mm-hmm. It makes it so you can't set up and fully commit to a hit. It's hard to do that and not elbow foul. And one of the things that and plus just your elbow off of the edge. When we had donuts and I did a post move and I drove my elbow forward, I knew where the end of the pad was because my elbow hit the damn thing, right? Or when I'm dragging to the back in a hook move, I know when I hit the back edge of it because my elbow hits it. Well, on a flat top pad, I couldn't tell you how many times I'll stop a match and the last year or so, I've kind of added a little technique to what I'm doing as a ref. When somebody's off of the edge, I'll stop the match. I'll actually hold their arm there for a second, and they'll start to complain that their elbow's not off the pad, and I go look down, and it's like, oh crap, they're a half inch off the pad or they're an inch off, right. Where you can't feel it, you don't know it, and I have two things on my bucket list, and one of them is to change the elbow pads to something that we don't have to call these elbow fouls, and go back to a modified pocket, a square pocket, because I don't want to get too radical on everybody and change back to a circle, but to have a half inch deep and half inch wide.
You have it. You can show us
barrier around those elbow pads, and I think I sent you a prototype of what I've been working on, but it's actually been a lot more difficult to manufacture and to get a prototype than I had initially thought. And I've gone through a couple processes, but I think I have a prototype coming to me from some of our arm wrestlers in Asia, and we'll see if we'll see if it proofs out, it tests out, but basically you have a half inch tolerance inside that pad for pressure on your elbow on the go and it hits. When you do a post move, you pull it out of the back end, you'll know where the edge of the pad is. So we'll see if it can be manufactured and done right. I'm still kind of working on how it all has to work, and it's got to. I don't want to just do this at my tournaments or Denise and my tournaments. That didn't do it any good. Like, all right, I could have the world's greatest elbow pad at my tournaments or our tournaments, but if it's not a WAF, then you're wasting your time.
Sure. And
so I need this voted in Congress. I need the countries to accept it and want it and change all their tables. So I've learned over time not to, you can have the best rules in the world, but if it's not a WF, then it ain't doing you no good.
Right.
And the same with the elbow pads.
So there's a lot of people asking reffing questions in general, Leonard. Maybe this is a good time to get to some of them. But we talked about when you were on the show the first time, which was a long time ago, as you were one of our very first guests, about the process of becoming a referee. And Ryan Bowen, who's watching right now, he said his wife must become a referee. And I know you walked us through like the process of how one becomes certified at the various levels as a WAF ref, but I would like to hear it again, and also like a commentary from you maybe on the state of reffing in the country right now.
All right, so learning the rules is obviously awesome, and anybody can get a set of rules from me or somebody else and learn the rules and actually know the rules. That's important, but knowing how to be a good ref is something I've been focusing on the last 2 years, and I made a couple documents where referee techniques, not rules, but referee techniques. No referee misses a call because they want to miss a call. they had poor technique. They weren't in a position to make a call, or their eyes, their technique wasn't. I couldn't tell you how many new referees. The first time they're reffing, they're watching the hands.
Mhm.
They're
Sure.
spectating.
Yeah.
They're spectating. And like, there's nothing wrong with glancing at the hands, but that's such a minute part of what we're doing. You're only glancing to see if somebody's opening up their hands for releasing or something like that. But for the most part, it's keeping your eyes moving, roving. Those are all techniques, and that's what I have in those sheets. Now, to physically be a certified ref, you have national levels and you have international levels. So in the United States, Bill Collins is the U.S. Head referee for the United States. He can certify you. I can certify you as the WF for our country. And so if you want to be certified for the U.S., it'll either come through Bill or I. And like they're Australia, right? So is it correct? Yeah. So they have their own head referee, and they can be certified in their country by their head referee. Mm-hmm. To be internationally certified, that only happens at Worlds. So if you want an international certification, you have to go to Worlds. You have to go through the testing and the seminar there at Worlds. That's the only way you're going to get an international testing, an international license. So that's basically how you're going to get certified in your country with your country's head ref. And I do several seminars a year. If somebody calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm coming to an event and I want to be tested," I'll do it. You know what I mean? And sometimes you like what you get, and sometimes you don't like what you get. Mm-hmm. But reffing in the United States is different than international. Also, like John, when you're reffing in the United States, and you two are arm wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. And I square your shoulder, and I go, "Bring your shoulder in a little bit more. There you go." And now don't move. Mm. Right? It's totally wrong for international. It's totally wrong. International reffing for that, it's shoulder, don't move. All one-word commands. There's 20 words that's in the rule book, and when you're reffing international, you are supposed to only use those words. Because John, you could be arm wrestling with somebody from Uzbekistan, and he understands 20 words, and that's it. Those are the only English he understands. And if I'm reffing you two, and I say that same thing to you, bring your shoulder in a little bit more. There you go. Now don't move. All he understood was don't move and shoulder. Sure. 2 words out of all that sentence. So how does he know what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. He has no idea all those words and all that language that I'm giving you. And so it's a level of trust also. When that arm wrestler knows exactly every word that I'm saying, he knows exactly what I'm saying and what I'm doing. And so it's important when you, like, I'll come back from Worlds and everybody thinks I'm kind of an ass because I'm just saying shoulder, knuckles, don't move.
You're like, Leonard, dude.
Yeah, calm down. All right, I'll do it. I mean, but it is, and so it is different levels and different type of reffing. So you have international reffing, and when we're testing people for that, we get a fair amount of foreign referees that don't pass because they can't just blurt out the English words when they need them. Like when they need to make a call, they can't be thinking about what words to use.
Right.
So we get a fair amount of referees from other countries that just don't make the cut because they don't have a mastery of the language. And it is what it is.
Is this why years ago they used to slap the table when you used to say stop, to kind of as an international sign?
That was a thing for a while, and but it was never an official. It came from Russia.
Yeah, I think I saw you doing it at one of the Golden Bears.
Yeah, because I'm a ref there, and I'm going by what they're telling me to do, and that's what they wanted, so that's what I did. But that was a Russian thing, absolutely, and it was as much for TV as anything else.
Oh, that makes sense.
All those Gold Bears, they were nationally filmed for Russia. So they were all on camera. They were all filmed.
Here's a question from Jason. There's a couple more reffing questions. I'm going to ask Jason's first because it follows the tenor of this conversation, and it's about instant replays. Do you support them? Do you think they'll show up at WAF at some point? And I know you mentioned before when you did one of the PAL events where they had the cameras that you preferred having a down ref rather than the cameras. I don't. Do you have the same opinion about instant replay for arm wrestling?
We've actually used instant replay in WAF. In Brazil, they had 3 cameras set up, and it was used for instant replay for protests. You protest a call, and I went backstage and looked at the replay and talked to the refs and made the call off of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily have a problem with instant replay per se or cameras, but you need several angles. You need 2-3 angles to make it work right.
Sure.
Like just one angle isn't going to do it. You need at least 2, right? And so it's difficult to set up. It's difficult to manage. My problem with the vendetta setup is that a camera can get hit during the match, mm-hmm. and so now it's me and one camera, and a lot of times there was a match with Tim Bresnan that I did where their hip hit the camera. There's a crucial time where his opponent's saying that he elbow fouled, and
no proof.
My call.
Yeah,
it's the camera's call, and the camera wasn't there to see it. Mm-hmm. So you can't make the call. Where if I had a downside ref there, he'd have saw that. Mm-hmm. The pin's on my side, the elbow's on the other side. When the pin's on my side, I'm looking for the pin. I can't see those elbows. And they're relying on those cameras to see those elbows, and that camera got moved, and it wasn't there.
And that is a standard in other sports. They have 3 or 4 angles for any kind of shot. We see it on in football and baseball and stuff like that. So that makes sense. If they had more cameras, of course, that would be cost prohibitive at WF when you're running 8 tables. Having 2 or 3 cameras at each table would be
right. And they only did it in the finals, and they where you're down to 1 table, and which is fine. And for the most. Like at WF this last year, they filmed it, right? So there was camera shots of it, and the way the protest works is just up to the 2 refs. You can't look at the film for a protest, especially when it's only 1 angle. Now, of course, everybody sees it afterwards, and it's kind of nervous, especially if it's you on the table making the call, and then you see the film and whether you're right or you're wrong. Right. But it is what it is. If you have a couple angles, I'm fine with it. It's expensive and difficult to set up right.
So there's a couple more questions for you. This is a good one. It comes up frequently. It's about intentional slips and losing positions. How do you determine when someone is actually losing and what a losing position means, especially in the international stage?
Well, it's technically intentional slip. And it's below 2/3. So just off center doesn't do it. They have to be below 2/3 to make a win call. Now somebody can be in a losing position off center, and they intentionally slip it just a foul and a reset back up. It's only match when they're below 2/3. So and the rules are really clear that we have to be sure that one of 3 things happened. Either he opened up his hands prior to slippage, they bailed underneath, okay, or they closed their hand into a fist. So one of those 3 things happened, and they slipped. Then yeah, you give them their foul, but you have to be sure of it. So like one of the things in our testing is. One of the questions is, so the slip happened really fast, and you didn't actually see him open his hands prior to slippage, but he did it. But you didn't see it. What do you call? And the correct answer is slip in a strap. because it's not enough to just know it. You have to actually see it happen. And so a fair amount of things from the audience, you're watching, you're going, yeah, it's intentional slip. Yeah, well, that was a professional slip because it was done so fast that ref didn't actually see the fingers open up before they slipped. And tie goes to the runner, man. That's a professional slip.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
we all know how many slips are intentional, which is damn near all of them. The only ones that that aren't the ones that hurt. you know when you're really trying to hold on, it hurts after you slip. You're like, okay, that was actually not intentional. Wow.
Exactly. And so was it a legal slip? And that's the key, whether it's a legal slip or a foul. And we have to see one of those three things. So, and where it gets confusing is a fair amount of arm wrestlers arm wrestle in AAA events. AAA does not use WF rules. 95% of it is, but that is one of them. And so in AAA, all you have to do is get them in a losing position, and you just pull through their fingers, and it's over. You get your win.
Yeah,
right?
No, it doesn't. Hand control doesn't matter. On top doesn't matter. Right. Yep.
You just get them in a losing position, and you literally, and as an arm wrestler, I did it too. You get them in a losing position, and you deliberately pull through their fingers because match is over at that point. Is it easy to ref? Absolutely. A slip happened, losing position, match.
Yep.
But was an intentional slip, and that's where WAF is different. It has to be an intentional slip. So that's one of the things where like if I go into what I call AAA area where there's a lot of AAA events, I make sure that my audience is fully aware of exactly what is and isn't a slip. You get them within a half inch of that touchpad, and if it's just a slip, it's a slip. It doesn't matter how close it is.
Yep.
So.
I noticed that a lot of, and I don't know if it's a AAA thing or what, but this kind of move, a lot of people try that here in the States and get away with it frequently, even at high-level events, and they get burned. That's called very consistently at Worlds. And I was talking to one of the pullers on our team this year. I was like, I know you do that a lot, but don't do it up there because they will call it as they'll call it, that'll be a loss. He didn't believe me, and he did get a call on him at least one match and ended up in a loss for it. He was shaking his head mad about it, and it's it's one of those problems that several people have mentioned on here during the comments during the show. That our roughing is not tight enough in the United States, and we let a lot of things go, like minor elbow fouls or that kind of slip, various other things, so that when people do go to Worlds, they're unprepared for the tightness of the roughing and the completely unforgiving nature of it.
Well, and not enough arm wrestlers are actually spending any effort learning how to be a professional. Like I can guarantee you that Josh, me and you can pull, and I can intentionally slip on you. I'll get out of that match every time and I'll get a foul because I've learned how to slip legally under the system. And guys get lazy and they just do that underhand thing through it. It happens way too fast, which then telegraphs that it's an intentional slip, right? And so when they do it really quick like that, it's easy to call. That's a foul. It's intentional slip. You know what I mean? It's not that hard to slip out of a match legally, but they've gotten lazy where nobody's learning how to be a true professional. Like I'll watch a match and I know they're intentionally slipping, but they did it legally. Hats off to them. That's a professional slip, man.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the fact that you just said, people aren't spending enough time being a professional. Do you train more or do you compete more, Josh?
I train more.
You train more. Train the way the rules are built. If you're in training, coming off the pad, coming up, coming off the side, coming off the back, coming off the front, you're going to do it in a tournament.
Exactly.
You drill all these bad habits in training. It's lazy training. And if you're a good teammate, you're going to call it out on your teammates too. Just like you hope that your teammates will call it on you. It all starts the way we train every single day. It's the same thing if you're setting up all on your side of the table and pushing to the side with your wrist curled in training. Well, when they straighten it all that stuff out in the tournament, those guys usually lose. It's the same stuff. If you're not
usually, always.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable where you're supposed to be, it just is what it is. Like I've pull with guys who I've trained, who I know that they really want to sit up on their side of the table. You kind of let them do that in a tournament, and then you just when you start to load, you just go and just put it towards the center yourself, and they're just a fish out of water. It's no different.
Well, that was one of my biggest complaints about WAL, frankly, was they were encouraging arm wrestlers all over the country to do bad things on the table with their elbows. And then they come to a real tournament or they go to Worlds or Nationals and they just all get fouled out and they're all mad. And they don't know how to arm wrestle under real rules. And I wasn't happy about it. That was probably my biggest complaint about them was they came up with funky rules, which all that was doing was hurting the arm wrestlers themselves.
Yeah,
it wouldn't help.
High level strong athletes basically rewrote the book because they couldn't follow the book anymore. That's what it was. I mean, let's be honest. That's what it was.
One.
Sure.
They didn't want to follow. They didn't want to follow the rules. I mean, somebody had an opportunity to create rules that would benefit them, and they took it. That's what happened, and it worked out.
I don't know. How well did it work out?
Well, it worked out for certain individuals very well. It didn't work out for the league or for arm wrestlers as a whole, but for a couple people, it worked out really well. Travis being one of them.
Well,
the rules favored his style, and he went home with $40,000 or whatever it was over the course of those few years as a result of having a rule system that was really designed for him, or at least it seemed to be designed for him. He was able to get away with stuff that he wouldn't be able to try in any other tournament, and it made him quite a bit of money.
Yeah. Travis is about Travis.
Yeah, I mean, especially just talk about the leagues and stuff. Eventually, at what point are we going to learn that you just can't throw money at the problem and sustain it?
Well, you mentioned this week when you said, the definition of insanity. Yeah. And when our artist was going to learn it. And the point that we're never going to learn it, because if you put out that big money, there's a certain percentage of people that no matter what, they're going to go for it. Because what the hell, $20,000? Yeah, maybe it'll be there, maybe it won't, but at least it's something to aim for. And no matter how many times they get burned, they're going to keep doing it. It's like buying a lottery ticket, man.
Well, there was a meme from one of the UAL memes there. Somebody forwarded it to me. I think Megan did. And I don't remember what it said. I know I commented on it. I don't have a good memory for these things. But basically, it was how you bring more pullers in. If you get an audience, you bring more pullers in, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there going, have we not learned anything? It's really easy to get an audience, guys. Car crashes get audiences. How do we keep the audience once they're here? And it's by legitimacy. If you can't explain what's going on to a person at home, then you're not going to keep them there. And when someone says, well, wait a minute, aren't they supposed to start in the middle? Wait a minute, aren't their wrists supposed to be straight? And you go, yeah, but whatever. Who cares?
Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine.
It's
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, and I'm sure it must, as this frustrating it is for me and people like John. I mean, for someone like you, Leonard, who's been running events with Denise for decades upon decades, and like Bill Collins and like Karen and Frank Bean, very high quality events, consistent. You guys always deliver when your promises. It's gotta be extremely frustrating for you to see this kind of stuff happen over and over again and impact your events, both in terms of numbers and financially. I mean, you seem very calm about it, and John and I are usually on the show ranting like idiots about it. How do you let it roll off your back so easily?
Well, I mean, privately we bitch at each other about I can't believe they did this, or I can't believe so and so is standing up for somebody when they do something stupid. But all you can do is just keep doing what you've been doing, and both Denise and I do this because we enjoy the sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we didn't enjoy the sport, we wouldn't be doing it. And we make lifelong friends. When we go to Worlds, most people don't understand that there's like hundreds of people we only see at Worlds. I mean that's half the reason we're going. Half the reason Denise goes for sure. Mm-hmm. But we have friends all over the country. I mean, it's really kind of amazing to think about what Denise and I and the rest of the USAA, because it's not just us two, but we started in 1985 and we've done 900 events. So that's almost 30 events a year for 30 years. I mean that's an average.
Uh-huh.
It's just crazy. And most of the work that's happening is done by her. Anything bad that's going to happen, it happens by me. So don't get me wrong. I have my role. And anything bad that's going to happen, I'll get called and I'm asked to do it, and I'm perfect. I understand my role, but for the most part, most of the real work is done by her. She's sending out the flyers and the mailings and the contracts and all the things. I mean, we've had sponsors bail on us, and we've learned over time that you have to have contracts, and then we learned what the right contracts are.
Sure.
I mean, if something is part of why we started doing the certified promoter program, where we're getting promoters from around the country doing our program, what we're doing, and we're teaching them the things that we learned the hard way. Something simple like having in your contract the right to recover attorney fees. You would think that would just be assumed. Hell no, it's not assumed. If you don't have that in your contract, you can't recover attorney fees. Well, how did we learn that? We got burned on it, right? I mean, just stuff like that. I mean, our push is to help the other smaller promoters around the country do things right, do things the way that it should be done, have good reffing, have good bracketing, have good tables there, all those things like that. And there's going to be people that and we tried to help Anthony. We had several conversations with him. Our board members had conversations with him. That's my biggest problem with Anthony. Isn't that he does dumb stuff. He won't take advice. That he thinks he really knows how all this stuff is supposed to happen, and then he does dumb stuff and says, "Well, what was I supposed to do?" Well, people all over were telling you not to do that. You don't advertise $50,000 unless you have a contract for $50,000. That's enforceable. You know what I mean? You just don't do dumb stuff like that.
That's a good point. Oh, man, hopefully he hangs around and learns some of his lessons, and he can listen to people like you and get them. I mean, again, everybody's trying to do things their own way, as John mentioned earlier, and so far it continues to burn them. You think they would take some advice from people that have been doing it for 30 years. What the hell? You might know something about it. Speaking of that, let me ask these questions, man. People are very patient because I keep telling them, I'm going to ask it, and then 20 minutes goes by, I didn't ask it. So I got two good questions for you. One is, this happened to me the first year I went to Worlds. If my opponent is applying massive back pressure and my strategy is to press diagonally towards their losing corner, do I get fouled for their elbow coming off the back?
As long as your move is an arm wrestling move, you are not supposed to get fouled for that. The way the rule states is that your only intention was to create a foul for them. So as long as you're making an arm wrestling move and their elbow comes off the pad, that's on them. So as a ref, what we're supposed to be looking for is like a direct forward push, because there's no arm wrestling move to that. There's no reason for you to take your fist and push forward. And so that's what we're supposed to be looking for. When you have a diagonal push across, that's still an arm wrestling move. That's still an offensive move. And so that is not supposed to earn you a foul. And if you do get fouled on that move and you do a protest, you should win that protest. Because the first thing I'm going to do as a protest official is to say, okay, what did he do? What direction? Where did he push? And if I hear anything about any sort of diagonal push, that call will get overturned.
So any kind of side pressure movement, basically, instead of, because
it doesn't even have to be side, but like it's perfectly normal to rotate at an angle through, right? But it's not normal to push straight forward.
Right. There's no elbow pad behind the guy.
Right.
And to be honest, most of the time, people that are doing that intentional push off give themselves away, We're looking at their eyes, and they're looking at where they're going to do it.
Yeah, they look at their elbow.
Somewhere to bail,
they look at the elbow.
And they look for it. You see them looking for it.
Bad criminals.
Usually they point it out before the ref sees it. They're like, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" It's like, yeah.
Take their hand off the peg to do it and everything. Yeah,
exactly. That happened.
And this has actually happened. What I love is somebody in the audience trying to help out, yelling up there, "Push him off!" Swear.
No, I've heard it. I've heard
Can't make that up.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now I can't do that. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. This is a good question, and I think you got into a little bit of this with Engen after Worlds this year, and it's about gambling and the potential of referees either affecting the outcome of matches that are gambled on, or potentially, for example, if a situation came up that you guys were thinking that a referee might be, giving an advantage to pullers from a certain country, or maybe not calling matches fairly. I mean, do you guys have review systems in place to deal with that kind of stuff? And is that something that you watch out for at larger events, like Vendetta or Worlds?
Well, yeah. We don't necessarily have a review system for gambling. Just more making sure that somebody isn't maybe helping or hurting a particular country that they either like or dislike, right? And so you got two refs at the table, and for the most part you have other people observing the matches, and so it has happened where there's been maybe somebody been accused of helping their country or maybe have a bias for a country, and basically what happens is when somebody has a suspicion of that, they notify me, and we'll actually pay attention to that particular referee through the contest and exactly what their actions are or aren't, and I have sat down referees for that. I have felt that they were maybe helping their own country more than they should. So yeah, we take all of those things serious, and we keep an eye on it. But for the most part, I've been doing this in WF since '98, and it's happened twice.
I would assume it would be very rare. I think the roughing there is very high level, and in general, I think most people would agree with that. So that brings us to
and the other thing, and I'll finish with, all we have as a referee is our reputation.
Right.
And so as soon as we start being any kind of bias or even anything close to that, and you lose your reputation, I joke that Travis Badgins will get a fairer shake on my table than anybody on the planet. Because anybody that knows me knows I can't stand the guy, but I would never come even close to doing anything shady on the table with him. Because once I've lost my reputation, you can't get that back.
Right.
And,
True.
and so that's all we have as a ref is our reputation.
Very, very true.
I had a question that I was going to ask you, and I thought it was a good one, and now it's totally gone because I got interest in what you were saying. See, I'm getting old, man. It's sad.
So as soon as I mentioned Travis, right? The last time I refed him was at Gary Roberts' Ruler of the Nation. Gary brought me out to do his finals for Ruler of the Nation, and I was very, very careful to make sure that as refs we get coin flip calls all the time where it could go either way. And he ain't gonna lose any of those coin flip calls. He's gonna make all those calls because I can't afford anybody to think that I'm cheating him out of something. But conversely, if you're my best friend, you're going to lose every one of those damn coin flip calls. My buddies didn't want me reffing their matches because they knew they were going to lose all those calls. I can't afford to be seen helping somebody or hurting somebody.
Yeah. I see that in the climbing tournaments because in the local ones, all the parents do the reffing, and they're always reffing their kids way harder than they should. Nope, you touched that. You're not allowed to touch it. You can do it again. And the kid's like, I didn't touch it, Mom. I'm like, yeah, do it again. Shut up. they would, for their own kids, they're like badasses and brutal. But I remember the question, and you bringing up Travis actually did remind me of it, because I was thinking about the match between Travis and Samarenko when they basically had a fist fight, and the match kept going anyway. And what I was going to say is, do you guys train like your Master Fs to deal with, like, for example, at Worlds this year, I don't even remember who was pulling, but I remember there was a call, and it was in the finals, and like the whole place started booing, like all of us have a better view than you guys do up there. But anyway, everybody was like, boo, 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 and it was super loud, and it went on for like a minute. But the refs, I don't remember even who was reffing, but everybody stayed totally calm about it, and they stood their ground. So is that something you train refs for, or do you become a Master Ref because you have the ability to stay calm even when you're feeling that kind of extreme pressure?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, and I know exactly what match you're talking about. And first off, even as a master ref, we can make a mistake, right? And so what happened in that match, I remember exactly that match. My downside looked away at an inopportune time. He did not see that pin call, and he missed it. And an instant replay or something. That's one of the few times that would have caught that. Yeah. But he looked away at the wrong instant, and he missed the call. And everybody out in the crowd, it's a downside match call, so they're all seeing that, and they didn't look away at the last instant, and they all saw that he did pin him. Yeah. And sometimes the crowd is right, and sometimes the crowd is wrong. Yeah. It was later on in the day where I was the downside, and the Russian pump hit the guy from Georgia, and for an instant he was a quarter inch below that touchpad. And the only reason I know he was a quarter inch below that touchpad is after the protest and everybody's booing me and all this. Then I got to see the video, and then I got to see, I was right. He was a quarter inch below that touch line for an instant. Right, but I was looking at the right time at the right place, and I got the call right. So sometimes the crowd is booing because they don't understand. Sometimes the crowd is booing because they are so right. Yeah, but you have to develop a thick skin. You have to like these are just matches. I don't really care who wins or loses. For the most part, it took me years to even recognize who some of the top names were, because I'm not even looking at their faces. Like somebody threw out a name. It's like, I don't remember that guy, what it looks like. You know what I mean? He's been there. He's been a world champion for 3 years, and I don't know what he looks like, or I don't know his name because I'm not paying attention to that. It's hands, wrists, elbows. The rest of it doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? So yeah, you do develop a thick skin. And as part of the things that I have in my deal is like, don't become emotionally invested in any match. Yeah. Now I broke that rule. I'll never, Bob Brown came up to me at my national one year in Tahoe and says, dude, why are you all upset? What do you care? I was morally indignant that this guy pushed off his opponent. Right. I was morally indignant that he tried to screw his opponent. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, and this was in the 80s, and Bob says, well, why are you upset? What do you care? And it really stuck with me. You know what I mean? It's like that, that's one of the things that really stuck with me. It's like, don't become emotionally invested in any match. It really doesn't matter.
That's good advice.
Yeah, I think that first conversation we ever had, that was one of the pieces of advice that you gave to refs who get fatigued throughout the day. Because, it's tough to stay fresh all day, but it's a little easier if you just really don't give a shit about these two people. The only thing you should really care about is the winner won.
Yep. Hands, wrists, elbows, ready to go. The rest of it. I mean, it's our job to give those two arm wrestlers as fair a start as possible. And in fact, Josh, I did you share with people what I told you should have done with that super match you did?
We did.
Between Rob Vigent and who's he pulling? Was it Craig Tollier?
Craig Tollier. I told everybody that you called me up and what you told me and all that kind of stuff. And I actually said, I mentioned you because I remember you saying you would never ref WAL rules again after the Hutchings-Herman Stevens match. And I said the same thing. I'll never do that again as long as I live. So.
Well, that was honestly though a situation where it really made me, because I was already kind of on the train anyway of this, but it really highlighted to me that you have to have very clear, concise, professional rules, because it's impossible to call anything if they aren't. And, you know, right before that match, we had a meeting with them, and they both said we don't want any fouls or warnings before they go. And I kind of sat there and I went, well, how do you, punish a criminal when there's no rules? You're going to have two criminals. That's all you're going to have, right?
Yeah, you really can't. And, frankly, I get a little bit, I don't get hassled as much at the tables when I'm reffing matches, because the arm wrestlers have figured out, I don't really care. I'll foul you out. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter to me. Mm-hmm. Like, you screw up, I'm going to foul you, and we're going to go on. I don't care. Like when you start caring about whether somebody gets a foul or don't get a foul, then you're in trouble. And what I told Josh, I don't know if he shared with you, but what I told him is what he should have done was an old school Steve Stanaway setup. Steve Stanaway was he for what he did, he was awesome. He was so strong. He would lay upon the hand.
Oh, he'd straighten him for you.
Squeeze him.
The old Dave Randall.
So you couldn't get out of it. You physically could not get out of it.
Yeah.
And then you'd rotate him to the center and blurt out, ready to go. There you go. Good luck. Yeah. Like you couldn't foul if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And you had to side load because he was so strong, he'd hold the hands in the center, and there'd be a slingshot effect where,
for sure.
You're just sitting there and your opponent's giving side pressure. You wouldn't know your opponent was giving side pressure. Mm-hmm. And you'd let go and you'd just slingshot over. And so you had to do it too. Everybody was doing it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you said.
That would have started the match.
It would have been a little more even, right?
Absolutely.
It's a funny.
I did try that in one of the matches. I don't know if you remember, John. I was grabbing them, and Craig actually was like, "You grabbed me too hard. I can't feel his arm. You put too much pressure on me." So then Steve. I'm sure Steve would have just ignored him and said, "Shut up." And then said,
see what happened.
There is no foul.
I should have done. But I mean, I thought about you a lot, Leonard, because I was thinking, Leonard would never have done that. He wouldn't have agreed to it in the first place, and I just think, Again, moving back to the idea of tight reffing, I think that's what the sport needs. And I know people don't like elbow fouls, but I think that's how it functions the best. Every sport is like that. They have rules people don't like, but when they're clear, they're followed, they're consistent, and the refs all understand them, and we all understand them, I think the tournaments are better. They run more smoothly, and you have less complaints, and less bullshit.
Yeah, and to me, that the biggest message when that whole thing happened was that these rules are not only there to be followed, but they're punishable. Mm-hmm. You have to have something where the guy in the stripes looks at you and says, you can't do that, and this is the punishment for it. Yeah. We can't just be like, well, that was something, I think that, well, you said, never mind. You said there wasn't any before the go. I didn't say go yet. We're all good. It's like, that doesn't really work out that way.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's funny, man. But anyway. Man, I see. What about that Travis Samarenko match? What would you have done had you been reffing that one? Would you have let it continue, or would you have stopped it, or what?
Now I try to tell my refs to head that stuff off early on. Mm-hmm. Like you're supposed to get 30 seconds for referee's grip, right? Well, if my two guys walk up there and they aggressively grab each other, start yanking each other around, I grab the hands, I stop it. We're in a referee's grip. It's done. We're over. Mm-hmm. Because when you let those things go on, they escalate, and then the adrenaline starts flowing. And you really don't want to fight at the table. It's bad. It's bad for everybody. So you try to mitigate that stuff as quickly as you can, so it doesn't escalate. Don't let them jack each other around. Don't let them get overly mad with each other. When a match is over and you can tell somebody is like really mad about it, you're kind of directing them away from their opponent. You don't want anything to happen. It's just bad, and so yeah, you shut it down as fast and as quick as you can.
That makes sense, and it's fun to watch in the sense that it's fun to watch something that's comically stupid, but they're two giant guys chasing each other around the table, and it's just like ridiculous.
Yeah, it's fun to watch Ultimate Warrior kick the shit out of Hulk Hogan too, but
yeah.
So, so I'm looking forward to seeing the new pad when you get some prototypes made, and maybe we'll get to see it at an event.
Well, if I get them in time, there's an event in Illinois, the Illinois State Championship. They get 140, 200 entries, so it's a pretty decent tournament. They're gonna have 2 Mazarenko tables there, and so I've requested 4 pads, and they're supposed to fit on Mazarenko tables, and I'll be at that tournament. So Blaine Lawrence is flying me out there for that event, and so I'll be there with the pads and reffing. I want to see how they hold up. How does it work? How does it?
It's a January tournament, right? I think it's in January.
It's January 20th. January 20th. So we'll see how it. Hopefully there'll be some videos with it, but I'm wanting to test them out. If it works out the way I'm wanting it to work out, what I ultimately need is 50 sets of pads, and to have a set of pads given to every country, because I don't want them to vote it in without testing it out, and to be fully aware that this is what we're doing. This works. We like it. And then vote it in. And then once it gets voted in, then depending on the timing of them getting the pads, or whether it gets voted in this year for 2019 or get voted in 2019 for 2020. Sure. Nothing happens fast in WF, so you have to manage your expectations. But that's one of the things that if I can eliminate 60-70% of all our elbow fouls, I'll be a happy camper, because I think that's what it'll do if it works. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
it's exciting.
People think us refs want to call elbow fouls, and we hate it too. We don't want to stop the match till somebody wins or loses. I mean, but it is what it is. Do you let an eighth of an inch daylight go? Okay, well, all right, we'll let an eighth of an inch go. Well, how about a quarter? Right. Do you let a quarter? Yeah, okay, we'll let a quarter. Well, how about 3/8? Do we let 3/8?
Well, don't be silly.
3/8 is too much. Don't be silly, right? So 3/8 is okay. So on an instant, we're supposed to determine whether it was a quarter inch or 3/8 or eighth or half inch. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Either you elbow fouled or you didn't elbow foul. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, when you have a pocket, you have some leeway for pressure. Frankly, an eighth of an inch lift or a quarter inch or whatnot, that didn't affect the match at all.
Nope.
That meant nothing, but it's making us call. And so if I can eliminate an inconsequential elbow foul, I'll be happy with it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we gotta keep trying.
All right, one more question before we let you go, Leonard, because we already kept you on here 90 minutes. How's Arnold's shaping up this year? It seems like there's been a lot of interest.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful what you wish for. I mean, we have 2.5 hours spread out over 2 days to do the entire event, including awards. It's probably the world's fastest tournament run.
It is.
3 tables, going full speed. We get an hour and a half on the first day and an hour on the second. The second day includes awards. Mm-hmm. So we have to get the 6 weight classes that we run down to 1 up and 2 down as our goal. Now, last year we didn't quite make that, and so they actually gave us a little extra time. But I think it's looking good. I mean, the Arnold is such a unique event. You're on the main stage. The cameras are putting you up on the 2 giant screens on each side. Mm-hmm. You are the focus for that event that day with everybody there. And when they're announcing your name and they're announcing the matches, that's going through the entire building. Mm-hmm. That announcer's voice goes through the entire building. It's not just on the stage. And so it really is a unique event, and we've been getting some pretty decent participation with Europeans coming over to it. So
last year was fantastic.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know if you noticed, but like when Trubin lost to Michael at that one, he was done. He was
Yeah.
emotionally done. And the same thing happened at the Vendetta when he lost. As soon as he started losing, he was done.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
Some people, that train stops and it stays stopped.
Leonard, this was awesome, man. We got a lot of comments. You should go through and read them afterwards because I didn't get to every question.
There's lots of details.
Yes.
Close the same way we opened.
We'll give you the details.
I think we gave them today, you know?
Anyway, man, greatly appreciated.
Right.
Hopefully we'll see you soon. And thanks for the time, man.
One of these times you have to make Denise do this. She doesn't like to be on camera.
Denise, definitely welcome anytime.
You'll have to make her do it.
I'm going to send her a message
We'll just
tonight.
put up a screenshot of your face while she talks.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck.
All right, everybody.
All right,
we'll
guys.
be back. Thanks
All right.
again. Till
Have
next
a good
time.
night. Yep, thanks.